Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to peel back the curtain on something we literally all use every single day, yet probably rarely think about. Our goal right now is to completely demystify exactly how computers actually communicate with each other. Because, let's be real, have you ever actually stopped to wonder what happens inside that so-called black box of a computer network? When you hit send on a message or search for a video, what kind of invisible magic is actually taking place? Well, okay, let's dive into this and map the whole thing out step by step. So here is our 6-part roadmap for today's journey. First, what is a network? Second, meet the hosts. Third, networked applications. Fourth, standards and protocols. Fifth, the client-server dynamic. And finally, number 6, origins, the ARPANET. We are basically going to build your mental scaffold from the bare metal hardware all the way up to the software. All right, part 1. What is a network? The black box view. Let's just go ahead and define the absolute most fundamental building block of our digital world.
So, a network. I know it can sound like a really complex, highly technical buzzword, but honestly, the actual definition is beautifully simple. A network is just a communication system that allows application programs on different hosts to work together. That is its core purpose. It's not just about, flashing lights in a server room or endless tangled cables. It's literally just about allowing different software programs to collaborate seamlessly.
And this image right here brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. Over on the left, we've got a laptop, which is acting as host A with its application. On the right, a desktop tower, acting as host B with its application. And right between them, that big blue cloud. That is the black box of the network. We don't actually need to know every single router or wire inside that cloud to understand that its primary job is just to bridge the physical gap between those two hardware machines.
Okay, part 2. Meet the hosts, clients, servers, and more. Now that we've seen that big blue cloud in the middle, let's take a closer look at what's actually sitting on either side of it.
In the networking world, a host is basically any computer attached to a network. So whether it's the laptop or that desktop tower we're seeing here, a host isn't just one specific type of machine. It's an umbrella term. It covers the client PCs sitting on your desk, those super powerful servers humming away in massive data centers, and even the mobile phone right there in your pocket. Basically, if it is attached to the network, it is a host. Moving on to part 3. Networked applications, software we use every day. So we've talked about the physical hardware hosts. Now let's completely shift our focus to the software side of things. Let me just pose this question directly to you guys. What exactly are networked applications? I mean, we all use apps, right? But what makes this specific category so totally unique? Now, what's really fascinating here is that these are applications that can literally only exist because of networking. Without that blue cloud we just looked at, these daily tools are completely useless. Think about it for a second. Email, the World Wide Web, Facebook, YouTube. None of these make an ounce of sense on a computer that's completely disconnected from the rest of the world. They rely entirely on that network layer beneath them to even function. Part 4. Standards and protocols. Rules of communication. Now, if you have all these entirely different networked applications built by totally different developers all over the world, how on earth do they actually understand each other? Well, they need a shared set of rules. And that brings us to application standards, which you'll often hear called protocols. These govern the communication between application programs. Think of it exactly like two humans needing a shared language to have a conversation. If one speaks French and the other only speaks Japanese, they can't collaborate, right? Protocols are what allow products from totally different vendors to talk to one another seamlessly. For example, with email, it really doesn't matter what brand of software you use because they literally all rely on SMTP, the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, to communicate. And it is super important to know that there are 2 main flavors of standards here. First, we have open standards, like HTTP, which are not controlled by any single vendor. On the flip side, we have proprietary standards, which are strictly vendor-controlled. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is the massive economic difference. Because open standards aren't locked down by one single company, they drive down product costs across the board and encourage widespread adoption and innovation. It's a real game changer.
All right, part 5, the client-server dynamic, how HTTP works. To really solidify this concept, we are going to look at how a specific, incredibly famous open standard operates in the real world.
So HTTP is your classic client-server protocol. Let's break this down using a really simple restaurant analogy. In step 1, the client, which in this case is your web browser, acts exactly like a customer ordering off a menu. It sends an HTTP request message asking for a specific file. Then, in step 2, the web server, which is like the restaurant's kitchen, receives that order, processes it, and sends back an HTTP response message containing the requested file, just like a waiter bringing your food out to your table. It is a brilliantly simple yet incredibly effective dynamic.
Number 6. Origins, the ARPANET, where it all began. Let's take a quick step back and see how this all builds from its earliest historical origins. Because, these protocols definitely didn't just appear out of thin air overnight.
We actually have to anchor ourselves all the way back in the year 1970. This was the era of the ARPANET, which was created by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA. Back then, these foundational network rules and early networked applications were built initially just to serve researchers doing business directly with DARPA. But as you can probably guess, what started as a small, specialized tool proved so incredibly useful that it spread like wildfire, rapidly connecting many different sites all around the United States. Which leaves us with a truly fascinating thought to end our journey on today. If those incredibly basic, rudimentary open protocols mapped out by a handful of researchers back in 1970 managed to evolve into today's massive World Wide Web, literally powering global tools like Facebook and YouTube, what will the next universal standard allow us to build tomorrow? It's a pretty thrilling prospect, right? Anyway, thank you so much for diving into the black box with me today on this explainer. Keep learning and keep asking questions.